They gave me the worst room on the family trip. They didn't know I owned the hotel. I arrived just past 3 p.m. when the forest around Pinecrest Hollow was bathed in golden light. The air was cool and carried the faint scent of pine and wood smoke. I stood for a moment outside the massive stone and glass entrance of the resort, letting my pulse settle. This place had once been a hidden sanctuary for hikers. Now, it was a luxury eco-retreat with 5 stars and a 6-month waiting list, and I owned every inch of it. But none of that mattered to the people inside. As I stepped into the airy lobby, the familiar buzz of my extended family echoed off the polished wooden beams. Laughter, clinking glasses, and that sharp hum of status-driven chatter. No one looked in my direction, at least not until my mother turned. Her smile dropped the instant she saw me. "Maya," she said flatly, like the word tasted sour. "We assumed you wouldn't come." I forced a small smile. "Wouldn't miss the Bellamy family reunion for anything, Mom." Behind her, my younger brother Liam, every inch the golden child, was in mid-conversation with our uncle, gesturing to his fiancée Chloe, who looked like she'd walked out of a ski fashion magazine. When she spotted me, her smile twitched briefly, then disappeared. "Did you drive yourself all the way from Portland?" my father asked from his chair by the fireplace. "Still clinging to that freelance thing?" "I have a design firm," I corrected gently, my voice calm. "Right. What was it? Sustainable, chairs?" he said, chuckling. Chloe tilted her head. "I thought you were in, cabin design or something? My yoga studio tried eco-architecture once. It got moldy." The receptionist behind the desk, a young man named Nolan, glanced nervously at me, then quickly turned his eyes away. He didn't know who I was yet, but Dean, the resort manager, had just stepped into the room and froze. "Maya." He greeted me with a subtle nod, barely perceptible, respectful, careful. "Dean," I responded, equally quiet. My mother clapped her hands. "Let's get the room keys handed out, shall we?" I had a chat with this front desk earlier to make sure everything's just right. Dean opened a sleek folder, face tight. "We've arranged the presidential suite for Mr. Liam and Miss Chloe, of course, with a full view of the falls. Mr. and Mrs. Bellamy, your deluxe suite is on the top floor, as requested." "And for Maya?" my aunt inquired, barely disguising the smirk behind her question. Dean hesitated. "Room 004. My cousin Spencer, already holding a champagne glass, laughed. "That's the one next to the utility room, right? Low ceilings, no windows?" "It's quiet," my mother said, waving a hand dismissively. "And Maya's always been low maintenance. She doesn't need luxury." There was a pause, short but telling. Dean looked at me. He knew. He looked like he wanted to say something. "It's fine," I said smoothly, stepping forward to take the keycard. "Room 004 will be perfect." I turned toward the elevator, conscious of every set of eyes on my back. The whispers were soft but unmistakable. "She always settles for scraps," I heard Chloe murmur. "Makes her feel noble, probably." Room 004 hadn't changed since the renovation. I'd made sure of that. Narrow and dimly lit, with humming pipes and the faint smell of detergent drifting from the laundry chute nearby. The bed was a full-size mattress wedged against the wall. No fireplace, no balcony, no view. I placed my bag down on the faded wood floor and sat on the bed, breathing in deeply. I wasn't here for comfort. I wasn't even here for confrontation. I was here to understand why, after 32 years, my family still looked at me like I was less. Why I was always the one they forgot, or overlooked, or mocked in whispers behind wine glasses. Why I was never enough. They didn't know this place was mine, and I wasn't ready to tell them. Not yet. Dinner that evening was hosted in the resort's signature restaurant, the Timberline, a space carved from cedar and glass, perched above the forest canopy. Long tables gleamed with crystal, and overhead chandeliers shaped like woven pine branches gave the room a golden glow. My family occupied the largest table at the center. I'd been placed at the far end, again. Technically, I was at the table. Realistically, I was positioned behind a structural column, half in shadow, barely able to see Liam or Chloe without leaning to one side. Typical. As the waitstaff moved like choreography around the room, I saw Chloe's eyes dart around with amusement. She was loving this, her perfect little engagement retreat. My discomfort to her was just seasoning. "So, Maya," Chloe called from several seats down, loud enough to make people look. "Are you still doing that little cabin thing? What is it, eco huts?" I didn't bother correcting her. "Still building sustainable homes, yes." "Right, right," she said, her voice sugary. "I love how passionate you are about, you know, trees and composting and all that." Liam snorted into his glass of wine. I studied the table in front of me. A small place card labeled simply, "Maya sat beside a water glass." Everyone else had menus already. I didn't. As if on cue, the head chef emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands and approaching our table. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and a dignified bearing. He made a beeline for me. "Miss Bellamy," he said with a small bow. "I've prepared something special for you. The miso-glazed eggplant you liked last time. I hope it's still to your taste." I nodded calmly. "Thank you, chef. That's very kind." The conversation at the table halted. "You know the chef?" my Aunt Clara asked, surprised. "We've crossed paths," I said vaguely. Liam looked puzzled. Chloe tilted her head again, a practiced expression of fake curiosity. "He didn't do that for the rest of us." "That's probably because Maya used to work in a kitchen," my mother offered with a hint of disdain. "You know, during that creative period after college." More chuckles, more thin smiles. Chloe sipped her wine, then leaned in toward Liam and whispered something that made him grin. The chef returned a moment later with a beautifully plated dish, artful and elegant, far better than the bland entrees my family had ordered. I began to eat slowly, deliberately. "So," my uncle said from further up the table. "Chloe, tell us about the Maldives wedding plan again." "Oh," she purred. "It's going to be magical. Private beach ceremony, drone footage, live music flown in from Europe. And we just signed a brand deal with a luxury resort brand." Claps erupted. My mother beamed. My father raised his glass. "To our rising star." I watched as Chloe and Liam soaked in the attention. And then came the inevitable. My father turned toward me, wearing the expression he reserved for awkward generosity. "Maya, sweetheart, you're welcome to join us in the Maldives. We'll cover your airfare. Economy class, of course." Chloe stifled a laugh. I smiled politely. "That's generous of you, but I might be busy. My firm is starting a new green campus project next quarter." "Oh," he said, taken aback. "So you still have that firm?" "She runs it, Dad," Liam said dismissively. "She is the firm." That drew another round of chuckles. I took a sip of my water. The ice had begun to melt. When the dessert menus came, mine was forgotten. Again. The waitress looked horrified when she realized the oversight, but I waved it off. "I'm fine," I said gently. "Really?" At the end of the meal, the family began dispersing toward their suites. Private fireplaces, soaking tubs, forest views. I walked alone toward the utility corridor, my boots echoing on the concrete floors. A staff member who passed me gave a respectful nod. They knew. They always knew. But that night, alone in my cramped little room with a leaking faucet and flickering lamp, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the discomfort, but because I felt a weight pressing against my chest. I didn't come here to flaunt power or to seek applause. I came to understand why. Why the people who should have loved me the most made me feel like a footnote in my own life. Maybe the answer was closer than I realized. Maybe the house of cards was already trembling. And all I had to do was watch it fall. The next morning, fog curled through the tall pine trees outside my small window. I woke early, dressed quietly, and slipped out before the family could start their day. I wasn't headed for breakfast. I was headed for the office that once belonged to Owen Bellamy, my godfather. The man who'd left me everything. His private office, now mine, was tucked behind the spa wing, away from the main guest areas. Most of the family had no idea it existed. That's how he liked it. When I entered, the scent of cedar and aged paper greeted me like an old friend. The room looked exactly as it had when he passed. Leather chairs, a massive desk, a globe bar in the corner untouched. On the wall still hung a faded photograph of him standing in front of Pinecrest Hollow's original lodge, hammer in hand, smiling into the sun. Dean, the resort manager, stood waiting beside the desk. "I found it," he said quietly, motioning to a carved wooden box. It was stored in the vault under his name. He left instructions. It was to be given to you only once you were ready. I ran my fingers across the smooth grain of the box. My initials carved into the lid made my breath catch. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. I picked up the first, dated almost 15 years ago. It was from my mother. Owen, Maya's not like the rest of us. She doesn't think practically. She's emotional, distracted, always chasing odd projects that never amount to anything. I know you care about her, but I'm asking you to be realistic. If you want this resort to stay in the family, it should go to someone like Liam. He understands business. He can carry the Bellamy name. I froze. There were more. Letters from my mother over the years, all in the same voice, undermining me, diminishing my work, warning Owen not to fill my head with ideas I'd never live up to. Buried between the folds of one envelope was a smaller, yellowed note. Owen's handwriting. "Helen, you don't see it, but Maya is the only one who carries the fire this place was built on. She doesn't talk about ambition. She acts on it. She's kind in ways the world underestimates, but that kindness is her strength. One day, this resort will be hers, because she's the only one who won't let it rot from the inside." I had to sit down. I hadn't expected it to be so direct. All these years, I thought my invisibility was just a side effect of family dynamics. But now I knew. It was manufactured. My own mother had campaigned to erase me from the picture before I even had a chance to step into it. Dean sat across from me, silent, watching my expression. "You okay?" he finally asked. I shook my head. "Not really." "I hated watching them treat you like that last night," he admitted. "You deserve better." "I just needed to see it for myself," I whispered, "to understand where it started and why I've never belonged." There was a long pause. I stared at the photograph of Owen again, his grin full of pride and sawdust. "I think I'm ready to stop hiding," I said. Dean nodded. "Then say the word. We're all behind you." Not yet, I thought, but soon. I stood and took the letters with me, folding them into my coat pocket like armor. The truth was finally in my hands. Now, I just had to decide what to do with it. The rest of the morning passed in curated perfection. For everyone else. My family floated between spa sessions, Mountain View brunches, and photo ops by the waterfall. Liam and Chloe had a couple's massage scheduled, followed by a private wine tasting. My parents lounged in the solarium, sipping coffee from bone china mugs and speaking in the same clipped tones they always used around staff, pretending kindness while veiling commands. And me? Well, according to the front desk, my massage wasn't confirmed in the system. Chloe gave me a pitying look when she passed by in a white robe, makeup flawless even in a steam room. "Oh no, you didn't get one? That's so weird." "Really weird," I murmured, "especially since I booked it 3 weeks ago." Dean confirmed it later. My reservation had been manually canceled 2 days prior. My mother had flagged it as a misclick and requested that all premium services be directed toward priority guests. Her exact words. I wasn't even angry. I was numb. At lunch, they gathered at the sun patio, sipping Chardonnay and talking loudly about Chloe and Liam's upcoming wedding. Apparently, the guest list had doubled since breakfast. "You'll still come, won't you, Maya?" my mother asked over the rim of her glass. "You can sit with the photographer's team or something." Chloe snorted, almost choking on her salad. I didn't respond. Not yet. The moment was building. I could feel it, like pressure behind a dam. Then the conversation turned. "Did anyone ever figure out what happened to Pinecrest Hollow before Owen passed?" my father asked. "One day he owned it, next day it was off the books." My uncle chimed in. "He must have sold it in secret, too bad. If we'd known, someone in the family could have bought it." "I tried," Liam said casually, stabbing his fork into a piece of grilled fish. "I sent in an offer right before he died. through Dad's firm, but no response. I think the place was already spoken for. Still a shame, Chloe added. We'd have made great owners. I tilted my head. Would you? They all turned. I continued, if someone in the family already had a vision for this place, someone who understood its values, not just its profit margins, wouldn't that be better? My father laughed, but it sounded uneasy. What are you getting at? Before I could answer, Dean approached the table discreetly. Miss Bellamy, he said with calm deference, your special order of wine has arrived. Shall I have it delivered to the private dining room? I nodded. No, here is fine. Dean blinked but nodded back. As you wish. My mother frowned. Wine? You ordered wine? A very rare vintage, Dean added. Miss Bellamy has excellent taste. Must be expensive, Chloe said, eyes narrowing. That kind of bottle probably costs more than your car. The waiter returned with it seconds later. A deep burgundy label, gold foil at the neck, unmistakable. A bottle worth over $2,000. Dean placed it at my side with the same care one would handle crystal. Complimentary, of course, he added. For the owner, I said softly. The table went silent. My mother tilted her head. I'm sorry. Did you just say? I looked at her fully now, for the first time in days. I said the bottle is complimentary. For the owner of Pinecrest Hollow. And then I raised my glass. To family, I said, letting the words hang. And the truths we keep buried until they bloom. The evening came dressed in silk and candlelight. It was the formal dinner, something my mother had insisted on each year since I was a teenager. She believed a carefully curated event helped preserve family image. I wasn't sure what image she meant anymore. The illusion of closeness, perhaps, of respectability, of perfection held together with white wine and secrets. The dining hall shimmered with golden tones from the chandeliers, linen tablecloths, crystal glasses, centerpieces of seasonal blooms. Everything was elegant, controlled. I arrived deliberately 10 minutes late. Heads turned. Even Chloe's ever-perfect posture faltered for a second. I wore a tailored gown, midnight blue, simple, powerful, designed by a sustainability-focused friend of mine in Barcelona. It hugged me in all the right places, and for once, I didn't shrink under their gaze. Maya, my mother greeted, her tone clipped. We were about to start without you. Don't let me stop you, I replied, taking my place again at the very end of the table. No place card, no glass poured, as if I were a guest of someone else. But this time I didn't shrink. I watched. As Liam launched into another story about real estate investments and his vision for a Mountain Luxe resort chain, Chloe chimed in with brand names and follower counts. My father toasted them both with pride. My mother beamed. Then came the punchline. If everything keeps lining up, Liam declared, we might even make an offer on a property like this. Imagine owning a place like Pinecrest Hollow. Right, babe? Chloe nodded eagerly. We'd upgrade the interiors, though. This place is cute, but a little dated. My fingers curled slightly around my fork. Actually, I said, you might want to hold off on that. The table quieted. What do you mean? Liam asked. I said, setting my fork down. This place is already owned, and not by some mystery buyer. Chloe raised an eyebrow. What? You know who bought it? I met her eyes. I didn't buy it, I said. It was gifted to me. Everyone froze. What? My father snapped. I stood slowly. My voice was calm, but it cut through the air like ice through crystal. Owen Bellamy named me sole beneficiary of Pinecrest Hollow. 8 months ago, I've been the owner since. The silence was absolute. My mother's glass tilted in her hand. That's impossible, she breathed. I reached into my clutch and removed a thin folder. I thought you'd say that. Just then, the double doors opened, and Elaine Kruger, Owen's longtime attorney, stepped in with flawless timing. Evening, everyone, she greeted. Sorry I'm late. Maya wanted me to be here for this part. Elaine distributed copies of the legal documentation confirming the trust transfer, the notarized will, and a statement of intent signed by Owen Bellamy. Chloe flipped through her copy with a forced laugh. This looks fake. Elaine's voice was like tempered steel. It's very real. I handled the entire estate. Owen chose Maya, specifically, for reasons he documented extensively. I glanced at my mother. And I found the letters, I said quietly. The ones you sent Owen, telling him I wasn't worthy. Her face went pale. And Dad, I added, turning now to my father. I know about the scheme, the underpriced offer, the falsified appraisals, the attempted buyout through a shell account. He blanched. That's taken out of context. Elaine intervened. No, Mr. Bellamy. It's not. My father fell back in his chair. No one spoke. I looked around the table at the family that had mocked, ignored, and diminished me for years. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. Because now they saw me, not as someone to respect, but as someone to fear. And that wasn't the win I wanted. I didn't come here for revenge, I said softly. I came for clarity. Then I walked out, leaving the wine, the silence, and their perfect illusions behind. The next morning, the mountain air felt different. Lighter, charged. I stood at the window of Owen's former office, now mine, watching the fog lift over the pine canopy. I could see the main lodge from here, the same building where my family had just learned the truth. And yet, I didn't feel victorious, only quiet, like I'd finally pulled a thorn from my skin that had been festering for decades. At exactly 10 a.m., the family gathered in the Sky Room, the glass-walled conference hall overlooking the valley. They didn't speak much as they filed in. A few looked at me. Most didn't. Elaine stood by the window, a sleek black binder in her hands. Dean was at the back, silent as ever, but alert. I stepped to the front and took a deep breath. Thank you all for coming, I began. I know yesterday was unexpected. Liam crossed his arms. My mother stared at the floor. Chloe didn't bother hiding her glare. My father's jaw was set like concrete. What do you want from us? He asked finally. You've made your point. I looked at him for a long beat. That's the thing, I said. This was never about making a point. I activated the projector behind me. A slideshow began. Photos of the resort when Owen first bought the land. Snapshots of him hammering beams, planting trees, serving guests himself in a tiny dining hall with 10 chairs. He didn't build this for profit, I said. He built it to preserve something, a way of living, a way of treating people, with dignity, with purpose. He believed that a place could heal what families often destroy. I paused. But toward the end of his life, he told me he saw our family fracturing. Jealousy, greed, comparison. He didn't want this place to fall into those same patterns. My voice steadied as I looked across the room. That's why he left it to me. My mother let out a slow, trembling breath. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Chloe rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath. Elaine stepped forward. There's one more thing. She opened the binder and pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed and marked in Owen's handwriting. To be read in the presence of my family, 6 months after Maya assumes ownership. I took it from her hands, the paper cool and textured. Then I read, To those I love. If you're hearing this, Maya has fulfilled her first obligation, to watch, to wait, to learn. I didn't give her this place because she asked for it. I gave it to her because she never did, because she saw what it meant, not just what it was worth. My hope is that this truth, now exposed, will lead you to face the lies you've told yourselves. That Maya was less, that worth is loud, that kindness is weakness. If you wish to be part of this place's future, don't prove your value to her. Prove it to yourselves. My trust lies not in blood, but in character. Choose who you want to be, starting today. Owen Bellamy. When I finished, the room was silent, not the heavy, accusatory silence of the night before, but something deeper, something reflective. My mother's lips parted. Her eyes shimmered with the edge of something I had never seen in her before. Regret. Maya, she began, voice soft. I don't know if I can undo what I've done, but if there's still room, I'd like to try. Liam didn't speak. He just stared out the window, hands clenched. Chloe whispered something to him, but this time, he didn't respond. I'm not here to cut you out, I said gently, but I won't protect the versions of you that hurt people. I want to offer something different. Elaine nodded, giving me the floor once more. I'm creating a family legacy council. It's not about profit or votes. It's about impact, integrity. We'll work together on community outreach, environmental education, and sustainability programs in Owen's name. And what about ownership? Liam asked bitterly. You still hold all the keys. I met his eyes. Yes, and I will continue to. But there are pathways to shared responsibility. If, and only if, they're earned. Chloe scoffed. So what, we jump through hoops for scraps? You're welcome to leave, I said, unmoved. She stood up. Maybe I will. But Liam didn't follow her this time. He remained in his chair, and that told me everything. That evening, the resort was quieter than it had been since the trip began. Chloe had packed her things and left after the meeting, storming out with one last dramatic toss of her designer scarf. No one stopped her, not even Liam. Dinner was informal this time. A simple family-style meal on the terrace with bowls passed hand to hand and wine poured without speeches. No place cards. No hierarchy. It was strange, but peaceful. My mother sat across from me, her napkin folded and untouched in her lap. Her hair was slightly out of place for the first time I could remember. She looked smaller somehow, or maybe just more human. Maya, she said after a long silence. I read those letters again last night. The ones I sent Owen. I couldn't sleep. I didn't speak. I let her talk. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I kept your head low, kept your expectations manageable, you wouldn't be crushed by disappointment. I looked at her. But you weren't protecting me. You were silencing me. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. You're right. My voice softened. Why? She swallowed hard. Because when I looked at you, I saw everything I was afraid to be. Bold, unapologetic, creative. You reminded Owen of himself, and I was jealous of that. He loved you in a way I had always wanted to be loved. A pause. I let that envy twist into something cruel. Her honesty was raw, unfiltered. For the first time, it wasn't delivered with a polished tone or filtered through pride. I reached for my glass of water, my fingers trembling slightly. I never wanted to outshine anyone, I said. I just wanted to be seen. You are, she whispered. You always were. I just didn't let myself see it. Across the table, Liam finally spoke. I think I wanted to beat you, he said plainly. Not because you did anything to me, but because I felt like I had to win at something. And you kept doing your thing, quietly, successfully, while I shouted into empty rooms. His gaze met mine. I'm sorry. It wasn't performative. It wasn't forced. It sounded like truth. And it cracked something inside me that I hadn't realized I'd been holding shut. Thank you, I said. We sat in silence for a while, watching the horizon fade into twilight. Owls had begun calling in the trees. Lanterns flickered to life above us. Then my father cleared his throat. I've been thinking, he said slowly, about the mentorship program you mentioned, helping young entrepreneurs. I nodded. I'd like to be involved. I think I could offer something, even if it's just cautionary tales. That made me smile. You'd be welcome. He hesitated. Do you believe people like me can really change? I looked at the man who once mocked my career, who tried to steal this very resort through quiet manipulation. But I also saw the father who had driven me to my first art camp. The man who once helped me build a birdhouse and told me it was beautiful. I believe in earned redemption, I said. And the door's still open. As the night grew colder, Dean stepped onto the terrace with a folded linen blanket and gently draped it across my mother's shoulders. She looked up at him, startled. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded, then caught my eye across the flickering candlelight and offered a small smile, the kind that said, "You're doing it." The following morning, room 004 was empty. I had moved my things into the suite at the top of the West Wing, the one with the best view of the valley. Owen's old quarters. My rightful space. But before I left room 004 for the last time, I stood inside it one last moment. The flickering lamp, the humming pipes, the stained floor. This room had been the symbol of my family's perception of me. Unwanted, inconvenient, tucked away. And now? It was going to be transformed into something else. A year later, Pinecrest Hollow thrived. Not just in numbers, though the metrics were impressive. Occupancy rates had climbed 20%, and the resort had just been featured in an international travel magazine for its sustainability initiatives and family-owned charm. But the real transformation was quieter, deeper, in the hearts of the people who once tried to diminish me. Room 004, the tiny forgotten space next to the laundry room, no longer existed as a guest room. We renovated it into a small, curated space called the Legacy Room. Its walls were lined with photographs of Owen Bellamy building the resort from the ground up. In the center, a single exhibit case displayed the original deed of trust, the one transferring the resort to me, and a framed copy of his final letter to the family. Visitors came through in small groups, often silently. Many paused in front of the display with misty eyes, because the story was no longer just mine. It had become part of the resort's soul. A story of misjudgment, of truth reclaimed, of healing passed forward. My mother now hosted monthly workshops at the resort's event center, mentoring young women on confidence, boundaries, and navigating family pressure. "I'm not here to teach," she often said. "I'm here to unlearn. With them." Liam took over a small sustainability startup incubator I helped launch with the local university. He was different now, quieter, more thoughtful, less sure of himself, and yet more trustworthy. My father organized quarterly seminars called Failures I Survived, where guests, entrepreneurs, artists, activists spoke openly about the hardest moments in their careers. His sessions were packed. And me? I walked the halls of Pinecrest Hollow not as the forgotten daughter, but as its steward. I no longer needed them to see me. I had become something stronger, undeniable. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through the tall windows of my suite, I found myself standing on the balcony, just as Owen used to. The valley stretched wide below, the trees rustling like applause. Dean approached from behind, holding 2 cups of tea. "You know," he said, handing me one, "this place feels lighter." I nodded. "It is. I think Owen would be proud." I smiled faintly. "I hope so." We stood in silence for a while, sipping, watching hawks circle in the distance. Then I spoke. "Next year," I said, "I want to invite more than just our family." Dean raised an eyebrow. "Let's open the reunion weekend to the local community. Partner with small businesses. Honor Owen's dream not just by keeping it alive, but by sharing it." He grinned. "Now that sounds like you." That night, I returned to the Legacy Room alone. The final exhibit had just been installed. A single chair from room 004. The original one I had sat in during that first night. Faded, creaky, still intact. A small brass plaque sat beneath it. From here, she saw the truth. And from here, she rose. I reached out and touched it gently, like an old scar finally healed. In the end, the story was never about ownership. It was about dignity and choice, and how the smallest room in the building became the space where a legacy was reclaimed, not out of vengeance, but out of vision. As I stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind me, I felt it. Not triumph, not vindication, but peace.